All right, everyone, welcome to week 3 of Digital Literacy Train the Trainer. This week, we're going to be going over Microsoft Data Analytics through Power BI. Power BI is a Microsoft site that allows you to transform, shape, clean, and visualize data. We're going to start off with data analysis. So there are 5 core components of analytics. These are going to be descriptive, diagnostic, predictive, prescriptive, and cognitive. Descriptive analytics helps answer questions based off of what has happened in the past. Diagnostic detects anomalies and helps explain them. Predictive identifies trends in the past and predicts if they'll happen again. Prescriptive will answer what actions should be taken to achieve a goal. And cognitive will be able to draw inferences and conclusions from existing data and then adds findings back to the knowledge base. So what we're going to do is look up some examples of these in healthcare. So we have ChatGPT open from earlier. I'm going to go ahead and create a new chat. And then I'm going to go ahead and send a message. So what are some examples of diagnostic analytics in healthcare? So this is going to give you a lot of examples of how diagnostic analytics can be used in healthcare. So you have predictive diagnostics. So by analyzing the patient's historical health data, including lab results, imaging studies, and vital signs, predictive analytics can be used to assess the likelihood of a particular disease or condition developing. This can help healthcare professionals intervene early and provide proactive care. You have image analysis, clinical decision support systems, laboratory test result analysis, genetic analysis, remote patient monitoring, natural language processing, or NLP for diagnoses, disease outbreak prediction, drug interaction analysis, and clinical pathway analysis. So these are just 10 examples of how you can use diagnostic analytics in order to help with healthcare. I would recommend going through ChatGPT and seeing examples of the rest. So let's go ahead and move on to types of analysts. So data analysis is a really huge job, and we can divide this into 5 key positions. So first, we have business analyst. So the business analyst takes the resulting images and interprets what they mean. A data analyst is going to profile, clean, transform, and visualize the data. The data engineer is going to determine the needs of the analyst in the company and then gathers data before providing the data to the data analyst. We also call this data wrangling. The data scientist is going to perform advanced analytics to determine questions that need answers and then developing the hypothesis. And then the database administrator is going to be responsible for the availability, performance, and optimizations, or how well it works, of the database. The business analyst and data analyst, those jobs are often combined in the one with companies. So once you profile, clean, transform, and create the visuals, you often have a good idea as to what those visuals are representing. So those job titles are often combined in the one. So when you're a data analyst, you're responsible for preparing, modeling, visualizing, analyzing, and managing data. We're going to go into that in just a second. So let's go ahead and dive into Power BI. So Power BI is great because it allows you to upload your own data. So you have the ability to connect to live data. You can import data via SQL Server, NoSQL, applications, files, and more. However, it can take time to load data, so you can remove unnecessary columns and rows before you upload your data. Let's go ahead and give an example of this. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new report in Power BI. So I'm going to go ahead and I have a CSV that I would like to upload. So this CSV was available on data.gov, and it is the restaurant scores inspections from 2022 to 2023. So I'm going to go ahead and click Get Data from another source. I'm going to import from text for CSV. Then I'm going to go ahead and upload my inspection data set. Power BI is going to go ahead and give you a preview of this data before you import it. Let's go ahead and go back to our PowerPoint. Power BI allows you to shape, clean, and transform data. So it allows you to transform data through Power Query. And then there are also several steps in cleaning data. So we want to go ahead and identify our column headers and the names. So in this data set, it looks like we have the establishment ID, the inspection ID, the inspection type, the establishment name, address, the type of inspection, like the type of establishment, the day the inspection happened, their score, their grade, the name, so the specific name of the company or the location, and more. So what we want to do is remove unnecessary columns, rename the data, but when you rename the data, you want to make sure that it makes sense to the user. It's better to give your data descriptive business terms and have spaces separating the words. Your naming will show that way in reports. So just keep in mind what you name the data now is also going to show up that way later. We want to replace incorrect values, replace null values, remove our duplicates, and change data types. So let's go ahead and do this for our data set. So I'm going to go ahead and open Power Query Editor, and I'm going to transform this data. So when I first open Power Query Editor, the first thing I'm going to go to do is click on View. And then I want to show the column quality, the column profile, and the column distribution. So this is going to provide you insights to what your data looks like. And the establishment ID, I noticed that that has no space in the name, so I'm going to go ahead and rename that. I'm going to go ahead and put a space in these names. Then I'm going to change this to inspection type, establishment name, place name, type and description. I'm just going to name that to business establishment description. Try to keep the verbiage the same. Inspection date. You have your score. And the score is kind of formatted differently, so I'm going to go ahead and capitalize that. Grade, name, and ID. And then we have the index. The index is important because it will tell you how many entries you have in your data. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to my columns. So the columns profile is going to show us the column of statistics and the value distribution. So we have 45 unique values. We have 1,000 total in this preview, at least. What I want to do is go through these columns and see if there's anything unnecessary. We already renamed our columns and identified our column headers and names. We have our inspection type, regular, follow-up, complaint, survey, office, enforcement, education. So all of those look okay. The data could be formatted more similar, but we're not going to worry about that. We have our established name. We just want to make sure that there's no misspellings or anything. That looks okay. Place name. I noticed that there's nothing in this column, so I'm going to go ahead and remove it. So I have the column highlighted, go to home, and then remove columns. Same thing for address too. Cities, we have Louisville, Prospect, and Masonic Home. State, I noticed that the only state available here is going to be Kentucky. So you may agree to disagree, but if you only have one unique value in a column, I usually think it's worth it to get rid of it. So I'm going to go ahead, just make a note you get rid of it, so that way you know what was there previously. I'm going to go ahead and remove. Zip codes, looking at formatting here, it looks like they're all 5 digits. Inspection date, and then intersection is also empty. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this. And then the grades, there are some grades in here, so I'm going to go ahead and leave grades alone. But I do want to point out the inspection date column. So it is divided into date and time. So what I want is I'm going to, so it looks like the times are all the same. And that might just be something Power BI itself did, but I'm just going to change this to date. And that'll just change it to date for us. So if you had a data set that did have times, and you have a date time, I'm going to replace. So I'm going to change it back to the way it was. And you want to have one column for the date and one column for the time. We can split this column. So we can split by delimiter. And notice here that a delimiter is going to be a comma, a space, anything you want to delimit. So you can designate your own delimiter here. But basically, a delimiter is what separates the data that you want to separate. So I'm going to delimit by space. But notice there's 2 spaces in here. So I'm going to go ahead and use the one on the left. So leftmost. Then I don't want to quote. I'm going to click OK. So this is also going to rename our columns. So we have inspection date 1, inspection date 2. So looking at here, we only have 12 a.m. So I don't think it's necessary to keep. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that. And then I'm going to rename this back to inspection date. So depending on your data, the previous way would be easier. Go ahead and rename that. So one thing we also need to do is look for null values. So in order to do this, I'm going to go make sure that all of my things are checked. And then I'm going to go and look up here at the top. So you have valid data, errors, for example, formulas that went wrong, or empty data. So all of the columns look like they're okay, but we have some empties. This one has some empty data. It looks like we have 9 that don't have an address. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of those. So I'm going to go ahead and remove empty. And then we have a lot of empty columns in the grade category. So this is something where you have the option to do many things. So you can go ahead and keep the data and use it as a data gap. You can remove the empty values, which will remove 199 rows. And most of our data does have it. So I'm going to go ahead and leave that alone. Alrighty, and then we're going to go ahead and close and apply. Alrighty, and next we need to take a look at data types. For data types, we're going to go home and we're going to click on the columns. So we're going to make sure we're on the data view. And then each column is going to have a data type up here at the top. So establishment ID should be a whole number. Inspection ID, zip code should be a whole number. However, it is a postal code. So I'm going to go down here to data category and change it to a postal code. This enables location. The inspection date, I want it to just show the plain date. I don't want this Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, May, August. I just want the regular date. So I'm going to go up here to format, and then I'm going to change this to the short date. The score, whole number, index, whole number, name and ID text. And if there's something that we missed, we can always go back later and change it. Alrighty, so we're going to go back to the report view. We don't have multiple tables here. However, here's some information on appending or merging. If you do have multiple tables, you can append or merge tables when too many exist. Several of the tables are similar. A table only has 1 or 2 unique columns, or you want to use several columns from different tables into your custom. You can append tables by adding rows from one table to another. However, the caveat with this is that you have to have the same column names and the same data types in both of the tables. The merge, you can add columns from 2 tables together. You just have to have one column with the same name and values. As we already went over, Power BI allows you to detect the outliers in your data in the View option. You can also visualize data within the Power Query Editor. Here are some types of Power BI visuals. So you have tables and matrices, bar and column charts, line and area charts, pie and donut charts, combination charts, cards, funnels, gauges, waterfalls or bridge, and a scatter chart. I'm going to go ahead and put a few examples on here. So we have all of our values here on the right-hand side. I'm going to go ahead and put a card that tells me how many unique inspections that we have. The best way to do this is by using the index. It's going to automatically pop up with the sum. If you don't want it to pop up with anything, you can go ahead and back in the data view, you can click Don't Summarize on the index. So summarization, don't summarize, and that will stop summarizing it. But I'm going to go ahead and do it this way, and I'm going to do this as a count. So I want to know how many unique index values we have. In this case, it's going to be 9,924. The same way, I want to see how many cities we have. So I'm going to put in city under fields. And then this will display the first city, but I want to do a count of distinct cities. There are 7. So you have your pie chart, which if you want to view parts to a whole, you drag this over here. So I'm going to go ahead and put cities in here under values. And then I'm also going to put that in the legend so it separates it out by different cities. I'm going to make this bigger so we can see it. And then one really cool factor of Power BI is that you can go ahead and click on a specific data point you want to see in a visual, and it will filter the rest of the data for you. So Power BI also allows you to format and configure your visualizations. You have your background, tooltips, titles, and axes. So let's say I want to configure my pie chart. I can go to the Format Your Visual, and I can change where the legend is at. I can change what I want the legend value to look like, what I want the legend title to be. I can change the colors of my image. So it's always good practice to use distinctive colors so that way you can tell your data apart. One interesting thing would be to look up color theory, because some colors complement each other and will display data better. If I had a bar chart and I wanted to view how many inspections I had based off the establishment, so I'm going to drag establishment to the x-axis and then the index to the y-axis. And then I want to count how many there are. And this will tell us that Subway has had the most inspections. Now I'm going to also bring up our conditional formatting. I'm going to go ahead, or columns, I'm going to go ahead and put conditional formatting in here. I want a gradient, and then I'm going to count. Empty values should be 0. I want less values to show up as white. I want my higher values to show up as red. And this will highlight darker colors, higher counts of inspections. So you can change data colors, you can format it, you can also change what you want to name your x-axis and y-axis. So our y-axis, I do want to rename that. I'm going to put the title text to number of inspections, because that is what the data is meant to represent. And then the title of the image, I'm going to go to General, Title, and then Inspections by establishment name. So there are also other data visualization platforms available, and they all have different features. So Tableau, ClickSense, Clipfolio, Domo, Zoho Analytics, Looker, Google Analytics. These are just a few examples. If you have any questions, just reach out to your instructors and we will get back to you and help you out best we can.